had 250K.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
No, it didn't before. It had the same as YouTube. Like,
good evening, morning, afternoon, everyone. We're back, baby. We've got the original trio. The original and the best. Shout out Crone. Nah, Crone will be back. Crone's unwell. Crone has he's got some sort of super flu, he reckons. I don't know if I buy it, but apparently he's suffering right now. He reckons it's not the corona. He reckons it's something extra special. So they've cooked up something for him and he's under the weather. But that's okay, baby. We're back in business. We were just talking before the show began. I mean, obviously we're going to do a little bit of a, shoot whatever before it begins about the whole Twitch YouTube thing. I don't really think we're going to talk about it in the episode, but like, yeah, the whole thing that it looks like we're going to maybe go back to Twitch because we've got these Prime Gaming logos appearing on the maps. We've got the QR codes that take you to Amazon Prime pages. First of all, that's pretty cool, right? Like actually having that ability. People are going to say it looks ugly, which it kind of does. But at the same time, every other sport is just filled with adverts all the time. Like you can't watch a football match without the adverts flying around the outside of the screen. So I'm like, you know what? If it's what it takes to, if that's what the CDL need to do to actually make it profitable from the rights perspective and have it on both platforms, then whatever, let's run it. Because like, I don't know if they're going to get a deal from either perspective, just because, I mean, YouTube can't be happy with the fact that they just plug in Amazon Prime stuff, Twitch stuff like on their thing. Maybe YouTube just don't care because they probably don't think about it from a competition perspective, but they're definitely not going to get the same deal they did when Fwiz was there, you know what I mean? So Twitch plus YouTube, baby. That's what we want to see. YouTube is by far the better viewing experience. I actually hate watching stuff on Twitch. Like I was watching the major. Were you watching the major? Not the major, the major, the ESL1 Cologne, right? Which I thought was a CS major, but it's like kind of a major.
Pretty much is.
And I missed like one moment, and then I look away and I look back, and obviously something mad has happened, and I can't see it because I mean I can click the stream and go back and look at it, but like, I mean, come on, I can't rewind. Taking the piss. So YouTube's like the best for that, but should be on both ideally. Drink of choice at the pub, fellas. Good question.
Be back in a sec, boys. 1 sec.
Yeah, you're good. You're good. Yeah, absolutely. See, breaking points on the money right there. You get your water, and that's job done. No, I'll usually have. It depends. If I'm actually having a pint, I usually have a San Miguel, just because I like the glass and it's actually kind of nice. Otherwise, I'll have if I'm not actually gonna drink, because I don't try and drink like that often, unless like a special occasion. I'll usually just have a glass of like a pint of lime and lemonade. So just lemonade with lime cordial with ice. Underrated, like hella underrated. No one ever has that. Yeah, beer Moretti actually might be go-to be fair.
Margaritas.
Or banging the margaritas.
Yeah.
Else is built
straight margaritas, bro. Bro, because I used to do ciders and like rum and coke, but they're too sweet, so you get the hangovers. Now I switched over.
Yeah. Damn, imagine I rock up to the pub like, saw me with a margarita.
I don't drink beer.
Okay, yeah. I'm usually like more of a cider man anyway, because I think it's interesting in the UK, like being from the south, like people in the south drink more cider, people up north drink more beer generally, especially living in Bath. Like there's they make all the ciders around there in Somerset, so you usually have a load of really nice local cider on tap. So, but yeah,
I like them during the winter, but during the summer it's just too hot and too sweet.
Yeah, so their total goes with the IPAs. IPAs are see, there's good, nice one, ID. I knew it was coming out. That always comes along. But yeah, I've never really got the IPA appeal, honestly. Honestly, Odie, the plan is just to stop drinking alcohol.
Same.
That's the ultimate play right there.
Yeah.
Which I don't really drink much nowadays. Okay, red wine is actually. Yeah, red wine is good for you on I mean, to be fair, I can't really talk. I was at my graduation on Thursday, and they had like a reception after the graduation. So we went into like this. It was basically a ballroom type thing that they hired out, but we were just all there with the parents chatting and stuff. And they had effectively what was a free bar, and I got through a lot of red wine because when the red wine is there for free, so I mean you can't really say no. So I can't talk. Or sick at a major? Like how? Oh, really? Ah, good excuse. I rate that excuse. We'll have to bring that in. They got sick of what? They had too much red wine, Odie? I don't know. Anyway, should we start the show?
Yeah.
Let's go, baby. Odie's back as well. Love to see it. Okay, cool. Well, major's over. What are your thoughts on LAG dropping the whole team for Clay, Viv, and Nero? Okay, well, I mean, why would LAG do that and not Boston? But you know, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in the show. Okay, cool. I'll do 3, 2, 1. What episode are we on, Omar? 74. Damn, that's a good. We're making progress, boys. It's nearly 3/4. Yeah, I watched IM Cologne, or well, it's ESL 1 Cologne, isn't it? Or maybe it's IM Cologne now. I don't know. They change it. Is it an IM now? Damn, crazy. All right, cool. 3, 2, 1. All right, guys, tacticalrab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome to episode 74 of the Breaking Point podcast. We're back. Major 4's over. The final, well, the penultimate LAN event of the year before the World Championship, the playoffs in a couple of weeks' time. The storylines coming out of this major, first of all, got to be said, best major of the season by a country mile. Probably the best event that we've seen in the CDL era. The storylines, the crowd, like, even though there were some production issues, on the whole, there were no real delays, which was key to keeping the kind of momentum of the weekends. There were game 5s, there were loser bracket runs, like there was everything going on this tournament, and the champion as well makes things super spicy. So, I mean, yeah, Austin, you were there in New York, right? We're back with the normal crew today. Crone is, I think, suffering with the Crone flu or something. He's unwell, so wishing Crone the very best. I'm sure he'll be back feeling at 100% very shortly. But yeah, we've got the original squad back in business. Thanks all for tuning in live on Twitch and YouTube after the fact as well, on all the platforms. And yeah, Austin, how you doing? You're back in business. Over the last couple of weeks, you've been away a little bit, but you know, you're out there in New York and saw the squad break the second place curse. So congratulations to the boys.
Oh yeah, I went from the Silver Surfers to the Bronze Bombers now, so you know, but it's not horrible. Been doing good though. Just trying to stay alive in this heat wave. Because we're over here, I think 90 something degrees too. So yeah, just trying to chill right now. We're already back in practice, so it's been nice.
What's good, line? You're back from Auckland. You've been away a little bit. Been grinding out some content, some real content though.
Some actual content. Yeah, I've been up in Auckland, which is about an hour flight north of Wellington, in New Zealand, and I was doing like radio production, learning the whole trade before I potentially get a job in that. And then yeah, while I was there, I was watching the matches as well in between, and yeah, great tournament, really enjoyable. Can't say I was sad to see FaZe drop out and not make a final. It was nice to switch that up a little bit. But yeah, overall, really good week of COD as well.
Absolutely. I mean, what a banger. Let's like, I mean, I guess we kind of talked about the event already, to be fair. So I reckon let's just crack on with these teams, to be honest. Because actually, no, before we do that, should we discuss the bracket real quick, Omar? I don't know if you want to bring it up, because I just thought we could mention this, because myself and Crone, last time out, we created probably the best bracket in CDL history. It was a pretty good one. Yeah, BBC One Extra hiring line. Yeah, here it is, boys. Okay, feast your eyes on this. This is the bracket that me and Craig came up with. I will say, like, Chrome was the one pushing this Paris over Thieves thing. I wouldn't have gone for it, but he wanted to do it. So I was like, you know what, let's do it and let's pick the upset here. And unfortunately, Paris over Thieves didn't look so good at the end of the tournament. But, look on the bright side. There's actually some things that are okay here. Like we predicted Rocker top 12. I mean, that's about it really for the good things. I guess Ultra top 6, and then New York made the finals, and FaZe also top 3. So we got 2 of the top 3 correct. So I don't know. There's been very few worse brackets than this in COD history, but there's probably been some worse ones.
Why was Crone so bullish on Paris like all year?
Yeah, he really
loves
wanted to
them.
pick them for one win, and because they didn't win, he was like, "We got to give them a win."
Yeah, his
I was like,
excuse
you know
was
what?
that they have to win at some point. But
Yeah.
nah, nah, man, this is
I
not
fell
the
into
time.
the same trap back in World War II when I was picking Epsilon, and I was like, "They've got to win one game," and then they never won a game.
Oh no.
So it's kind of sad. But yeah, good bracket from the boys there. I mean, in fairness, Paris put up a fight against FaZe. I mean, we could talk about that in a second. But we do have to talk about the teams that fell out of the tournament. I'm not even going to mention Paris, but a team that actually made less prize money than Paris this year. Congratulations to the Minnesota Rocker. They've done it. They've made less money than Paris. Excluding bounty matches, but who really cares about them? So they only made 20k this year with, I think, 2 maybe top 8 placings and 2 top 12 placings, and then failed to make it out of the group of the Pro-Am. And then Paris, by making top 8 at the Pro-Am, actually made more money than Rocket did this season. So that's fantastic stuff. They went 0-2. They went 2 up against New York. Stanley was talking trash, got reverse swept. The Bulldog came to play, and then they again lost a game 5 to OpTic, right? And this is the thing. This is where they missed Major Maniac to me. If they have Major Maniac, they win one of these game 5s, like 100%, I think. But without him, they just lost their win condition. Like Minnesota's whole shtick, and the reason why, no particular discredit to, well, okay, I don't like teams that torch my time, and the chief time torchers are Paris Legion because they're worthless, Florida Mutineers because they make stupid changes, somehow get good results, and then justify it with a bad team that's never going to have any results, and Minnesota Rocket because they always go game 5 and like just waste unnecessary time when you could just lose in 3 maps. So those are the 3 teams that I don't like, and Minnesota proved it again here by going game 5 twice and losing anyway. And they've done what they did best there, to be honest. So I wasn't really sad to see them not make champs. But what I will say is that I do feel bad for Attach individually, because yes, Standy was a monster last year, and then this year he's far from that player, which I think has hurt them. Priest on an individual level has probably just not been good enough, but I think it's about time we see him in a different system to see if it can work again. And Attach was the MVP of this team for some time and isn't going to go to champs. Same story really with Slasher based on their recent performances. So feel bad for Attach, to be honest. Not really sure what the next port of call for them is, but I mean, yeah, Minnesota, Florida, London, none of them made champs. I mean, I think definitely the best 8 teams we have here made champs, Austin, but like, what do these teams do next year, right? Because they've already got to think about their off-season plans.
Yeah, they're going to have some tough questions. A bunch of these teams are probably going to be like doing full rebuilds because a lot of like the star players on these teams aren't under contract as well. So you're going to see some flip-flop just there. And if you lose your star player, you're probably going to just want to restart the whole system. So that's probably what you're going to see. Like Minnesota's going to have a bunch of tough decisions. Just because going around right now, obviously, it's rumored that Attach is under contract for next season. Attach obviously was their best player this season. They don't have Major Maniac anymore, and Standy is also rumored to be a free agent. So that would leave you with Preston and who am I missing?
Havoc, right?
Havoc. And I think Havoc's a good get. He was one of the better SMGs. So and right now I think good SMGs are a extreme rarity. So like having a good SMG on your team can be a good like asset to pull other players into joining your team. So it's not the worst. They'll still have pieces to work with. Something I am kind of excited about to see is Preston going to a different lineup next year, because quite honestly, the last 2 years in this Minnesota team just have not been kind to him. He went from one of the most versatile players for years, for like 3 years, and then he goes into the Minnesota team. He's not been too hot. I think that needs to be new system. I'm excited to see what SMG pairs up with Havoc next season. I'm excited to see, even though Paris is kind of a meme, they're obviously going to Vegas. Who knows if that means more investment's going to be put into it. They're obviously going to have a good calling point there, a good advertising point for players to come in for Vegas. So there are a bunch of questions, including, Florida, who again is one of those teams where their star players are rumored to be free agents. So we're gonna have to wait and see kind of what happens on the star market, because those players could go to teams above them and make waves, and that in turn makes more free agents, and you never know what could happen. So it'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah. Rocket had such a strange season. They were like kind of middle of the pack all year, if not like bottom third. And then they had that major 3 qualifier run where they went 5-0, and everyone thought, oh,
That's not too bad.
these
That they did
guys,
that, isn't it?
they're elite. And then they come into the event. Didn't they come top 8 at that event?
I think
Like,
top
No,
eight.
top 12. I think top 12.
Really? They got double
I-
bopped?
I think they got double bopped. I'm gonna have to bring this up.
Oh, no.
This-
They got top 8.
This time they
and
got
then-
double bopped.
Yeah.
Yeah, they came top 12 at their own major, didn't they? And I think they came top
Yeah.
8 at major 1.
Yeah. So they came top 8, top 12, top 8. Oh, yeah.
I'm
and then
sorry.
top 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had one. They had one win. I forgot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Congratulations.
And the fact that they got less prize money than Paris says a lot. It just seems like on land they couldn't quite transition that. And then the other teams, Paris just looked terrible all season. They need to make huge changes. What are you guys? Because everyone's coming up with teams for like Boston or Rocker, but no one's really coming up with any ideas for Paris.
Oh
Anymore.
no, that's I don't even care, bro. I'm not giving them any free ideas. Like I'm gonna do the X thing and say they gotta consult for that one. They gotta consult for advice. Paris ain't getting anything from the COD community because they haven't given anything back. So
Well,
they
yeah,
can pick
Austin
up the
made a good
scraps
point.
again.
Austin made a good point with moving to Vegas. They might get more opportunity, maybe more attraction from players, from sponsors. So maybe there's some hope there. Florida's the same old team as last year. And then LAG were good for one event and then lost it all. They had no consistency throughout the year.
LG
apart
are the
from one
craziest
weekend.
one, I think, out of these 4. Like
Yeah, 'cause
they're
they were almost guaranteed into the champs
yeah,
bracket.
they looked kind of guaranteed. But everyone around them just turned the hell out, to be honest. Or teams above them were just gifting wins.
Yeah.
But like LAG somehow didn't make it, despite making 200 grand at Major 2 by winning that. So their story is crazy, but
Wait, somehow? These guys were like they had the one good major, but like, oh man, they were throwing away so many good opportunities for points early in the season. I don't know
Yeah.
about and even late in the season. That major 4, I mean,
yeah, they didn't deserve to make it for sure. I mean,
Somehow,
I don't know what they
man.
do now, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
do you build around? Because Slasher was turning up. Like, there's the thing with Slasher, man. I do rate him highly for reasons like this. Even online, he was just having God mode series against you guys online to get a crucial win, and then played big against London in their first series. And then they ended up losing to you guys eventually anyway and didn't make it through. But it was even in that was a close one, right? So it's just tough to say what you do because obviously SMGs are the key. And they should have had good SMGs this season, but they benched Asim and then like HECZ there or thereabouts and Neptune, like he kind of turned up, but he wasn't quite that guy. And they just weren't quite good enough on the whole, right? And it's interesting because at the start of the year, we said that we thought one of the LA teams would flop. And it's funny because both of them won an event. But as it's turned out over the year, like they kind of both flopped and both won it because like they were both bad at times. But this team just got the worst end of the stick and couldn't keep it up. Thieves peaked at the right time, I guess.
It's unbelievable. Like LAG got 95 of their 155 points in like a 3-week span, and then scored 65 more points for the rest of the, or 60 more points for the rest of the year. And if they'd won one more series, like one game 5 goes different, they make champs, which is mad.
see, that's why I don't think if you win a major, you should automatically qualify. That exact reason right there. If you cannot win an event and then have some form of consistency over the remaining 75% of the year, you do not deserve to be in the playoffs. Like, I don't know if you guys agree with that, but like,
No, I
do
agree with that
agree.
take for sure.
you win if you win one major, you are almost like, because we were talking about it actually, like what we thought the point threshold would be to make it the champs. And I remember I said around like 160, right? I think I said 160.
Yeah, we said 160.
If you win an event, you get 65 points. And to win the event, most likely you got probably around a minimum 30 points in the qualifying stage. So that gives you probably 95 points. You have to win 6 matches for the rest of your season. 6. And I was blown away. I don't know. I did not think they were gonna like get knocked out. I definitely thought they had a higher chance of making it than New York, but I was just thinking like, damn, like, you know, they only scored 10 points during the Major 3 cycle. They only scored 30 during this cycle. It was just really tough for them. Really tough.
Yeah, I think
The fact
people came
that-
up with that idea. I'll just say this real quick, and then
Yeah.
Like the idea that people had, like if you win an event, you make champs, was because last year it was so clear cut that people were like, oh, like one of the bottom 4 teams, if they make a miraculous run and win it, like they should get champs just to make it more exciting. But like this season, that storyline was just irrelevant because it was just too competitive. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was just going to say, the fact that New York even made it is still ridiculous to me. They were on 70 points literally 3 weeks ago. And then they pull off a ridiculous run that no one thought they could
90
actually
points
do.
in one
90,
stage.
Yeah. And got it done, which is ridiculous. And I'm so happy they did, because like entertainment-wise, that team is like top 3. And then like social media-wise, that's the best team in the league. So it's like, we need these guys in there. And the New York fan base is, as proved on this weekend, like actually very strong. And I'm excited to see them at Champs for sure.
They're also a far better team than Florida, so that's nice.
Yeah. Well, they're obviously like top 4 right now.
Yeah,
Probably
well,
top 4.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I would say they're probably the third, maybe the third favorites. They do play FaZe round 1, so it makes it a bit harder. But I mean, look, if they beat FaZe, who knows? We'll obviously do our bracket predictions next week for Champs. Did want to touch on Florida before we move on to some of the other teams, because surely it's about time that Skyz and Wake go their separate ways. We said it should happen last year. It didn't happen. And I'm not sure that them not doing that was really what held them back. But I think they're both free agents now. And surely, if you're Skyz or Awakening, you don't want to be part of this org anymore. Have you not had enough? Like, is Skyz not looking for upgrades? Is he not looking at maybe Boston and thinking, I think probably a lot of many are looking at Boston right now and thinking they have decent subs and see if they can drop Zilly for me. But like Wake could go somewhere. Like, I don't know what they do or where they go, but if they do leave, like Florida lose a lot of their firepower. But surely those guys don't want to stay. And it seems like those guys are free agents. And as you said earlier, Austin, like if they move to a better team that can upgrade, then that leaves another free agent. It could be a mess. But it's about time that Florida, like, I guess, rebuild, maybe keep one of these guys, whoever wants to stay, if you can lure them to stay.
Yeah, I definitely think, like, Awakening by himself, like, I'll just talk about Wake first. I think personally he has one of the best, like, gun skills in the game. I just think he needs to find like a leader, a system that works for him. I just don't think the system's working for him. Obviously, Florida for the last 3 seasons has been very, we call it very chow heavy. Like they're very aggressive, in your face. So like that system isn't the most consistent. So if you're firing on your day, you're going to be really, really good. You can beat anybody. But if you're not firing, if you're having an off day, it's not going to be like a system where you can grind out a hard point while getting outslayed. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to be able to have those hard points where you get outslayed by like 4 kills and still win. Like it's not going to happen. So I personally think a new system where he's built as like the star player, kind of like how like Dashy or MC is on ours. It's like if you can build it so like he's like the AR player who you build your system, like he can just be stationary. He can just go to the headies, kind of like how Kenny was last year on the Thieves. I kind of like that. Then I think he can be a good player. Like he could be. I would not be shocked to hear any team besides like probably us in Texas. Like I don't think that's gonna like if any other team picks him up, I would not be shocked because I think he is that talented. I just think he needs to find a good system, a good leader to like build around. Skyz, I think is a fantastic AR. I think he could fit into a bunch of different teams. I just think right now, if you have 2 ARs and that's Awakening and Skyz, like I think that works as long as you have 2 like ARs or SMGs that are aggressive. I just don't think the combination that they had at Florida the last 2 years has been conducive to getting the best out of both of those players. I just haven't seen it. So they definitely need to. I don't even think they have to get away from each other. If they stick together and get different SMGs with them, it could still work. I just think they probably will like go because right now SMGs are just really, really hard to find a good SMG duo that you want to play with, and it just seems like right now that is very key to being a good team. So, yeah, it's gonna be tough, but I am very interested to see where both those players go.
Mm-hmm. And I would assume that Florida would want to keep them, obviously, especially going into Modern Warfare 2. Like they had so much success in the first Modern Warfare 2019 that they would obviously want to keep them. I just think that they're one of those teams that needs to like potentially look internationally for some SMG talent. Maybe the EU has some players that could fit them. I just feel like those two players alone are extremely talented, and it would suck for them to lose all their pieces going into next year. Because what would Florida do in that situation? Do a Boston breach and pick up a random 4-man squad going into the season and hope for the best? Like, I don't know. What are the contract situations looking like at Florida?
Well, Skyz and Wake, we think are free agents, but we don't actually know because they've been there like 3 years. But
Yeah.
I think maybe they released them after Modern Warfare or something and then re-signed them for Cold War and then extended them. So now I think they're free agents. That at least is what everyone's saying. So we don't really know.
Ben was talking about it yesterday on the flank, and he was saying it's very, very hard to find out the contract situation. He's been making a lot of like YouTube videos about this stuff, so if you want to check that out, his YouTube channel. But
I've been doing the same.
Yeah, he's been doing like trying to figure that out. Currently, it's like rumor because like, you really don't know unless you get confirmation from a player or team. It's rumored that Caesar and Wake and Yeez could be like their contracts could be done. We're not 100% sure. You won't really know until the end of the season, probably. The thing that's really, really tough is I don't know if there's any like can't miss SMG project like players like amateurs right now that you could snag. Of course, a new game, new play style, they come out of the woodwork just randomly, but it's going to be very difficult for them to rebuild. I would not be shocked to see them take some chances on some more veteran players. You have Clay, you have Brack, you'll still have Mike, like Major. You'll still have a bunch of like decent pieces. I would not be surprised if they go down more of a veteran type route and then try to bring like a amateur or two, a younger player or two, and try to mold them and try to go that route. That would not shock me.
That seemed like the best way, like the safest route. Like that's kind of what Seattle did this year. Just like a veteran, a talented player in their prime and Mac, and then 2 rookies. And it seems like that's quite conducive of a successful team as of late, especially like Clay's teams of years past. Like picking up rookies around him has always worked. So maybe Clay and rookies is just a method for success.
Well, the problem is I just don't see 3 or 2 rookies that you would pick up right now that would make a good team. So that's why I think they're going to go probably with like 3 veterans. I think they're going to go like maybe take a risk on an ex-professional player that was in the league that's not. Like I saw Brack has been doing really good this year. Obviously Clay went down, but Pander has been pretty good on the AR. Like Loki, Assault's had a kind of like a rejuvenation. I could honestly see a world where it's like Clay, Mike, Vickle would be like the young guy that would take a risk on, and then try to get like a more.
I want to get like Wardy or something though. Like, no, does the team not want to give a chance to Wardy because they've looked similar what's happened to Pred and that, you know?
You're gonna have to take a
Wardy's
risk.
Kind of that next name that's been talked about as terms of SMG talent. So I feel like Florida would do. It's their type of move. I think Florida to do something like that. So we'll see what they come up with.
A low key one because Florida is very like. There's a lot of Spanish speaking. It's obviously there's a lot of influence from like the Caribbean, Hispanic regions.
Real.
Having a full Spanish team would not be crazy. Like because I would
actually love that.
The best amateur player this season in terms of statistics has been Super. He is on AYM, who is owned by a footballer in England. I can't.
Oh, is he the City player?
Yeah.
I think so.
They got picked up. So AYM.
Someone on chat will know before me. Yeah,
I think they call it AIM. I think that's I just call it AYM, but I think it's AIM. Eric Boom, Journey, Super, Yakko. But I honestly think if you took the pieces from Minnesota Rocker Academy and AIM, you can make a decent Spanish team. And in Florida, obviously, there are lots of Spanish speaking people there. It's a very rich culture down there for that. So crazy far out thought, like maybe that's not a terrible idea if you wanted to go down a route where you would get a lot of like coverage by doing that. You would get a lot of like people would be really interested to see how that goes because we haven't had a Spanish team since Black Ops 4 when Team Heretics came in and they were, arguably a top 6, top 8 team for most of that year. But yeah, I would say Super, Journey, Eric Boom. You could do Lucky. there was lots of good Spanish players right now, and there's some coaches over there, so they have the talent that would be able to make a decent Spanish team, and I would honestly like to see that more foreign players in the league.
Yeah, it's one thing the CDL lacking really. Like that's sort of the thing when Breaking Point did the tweet about which nationalities have represented at champs. And I was just looking, okay, there's a fair few countries there, but the real outlier was that there's no Spanish players, right? Which has been a key part of the scene for many years. And to have no Spanish players was like, struck me as kind of like, come on lads, let's sort this out. Anyway, let's talk Boston because they are a team that to me are in a similar conversation. I don't really know what London are going to plan to do because they probably want to keep with the whole UK thing. And the fact of the matter is that yes, they're not turning up right now on LAN, but they've still looked all right, and they did lose 2 Game 5s here, so they just seem to just get nervous or can't clutch up. Don't know what it is, but it's like any other change that they made for Harry, it didn't really seem to improve them, so I wonder what London will do. But Boston, to me, made the more interesting one, just because Vivid and Nero have proved to be a very good SMG pairing, and I think that Nero was also good last year, as was Vivid, so I don't think that they have to be concerned about that just being a vanguard duo that's good. Like, I think that that can be a solid duo next year as well. The question is, what do you do if you're Boston? Because I can't see them winning champs. If they do, fair play, but they've always struggled against the top teams this year. So let's assume they come top 6, top 8 at champs, and they've got to figure out what they do with their roster. What do you do with TJ? Do you do anything with Methods? Because obviously Methods has been a key piece of this brand. I think he's a key attraction to the team, and I think he's been solid this year. Would he be my preferred AR if I was the GM of this team? I wouldn't say so necessarily, but I feel like there might be some options for TJ in the flex role. I don't think he's been as good as they need him to be in that position. We've talked about Temp. Even when you mentioned Awakening from, Florida was an interesting option for me in that position. If you put Awakening on this team as the flex, and then I still think that Clay can have a good year here. I know that people say Clay's hella overrated now because, or whatever, he's washed, But I'm just looking at what Crim has done, what Slash has done, what even Scump's done this year and still won events. And I don't think that I think that the whole age thing is overgassed to a degree. And yes, that whole team with Clay didn't work, but I still think that Clay has at least one more good year in him. And he was one of the best men ARs in the game at the start of last season. So I still feel like he can be part of a team that can win championships. And I would potentially like to see him on a team like this, because I think that, you probably can get more out of the SMGs on this team, maybe than Zinni can as a leader. And yes, maybe chemistry wise, it could break down, but that's what your coaching staff is for, to help manage that if you were to bring in Temp or Wake as your flex. But I feel like that team with Clay plus Temp or Wake plus Vivid and Nero has an awful lot of firepower. And maybe you have Skyz in here instead as the main. I don't really know, but I feel like there are some options here for Boston, because the way I see Boston is like they built this team at kind of last minute and made some great pickups, and they've nabbed the Vivid pick. But I'm sure their mindset was like, let's kind of do what Toronto did in Modern Warfare, find some good players, build a solid team, and then choose the best ones to move forward to try and keep growing as an organization and not being satisfied with top 6, top 8. So that's just my thinking of what they might do, but maybe you disagree. What do you reckon, Austin?
Yeah, I actually think they're in a good spot because they just made their team this year. That means they have all their contracts for next season. Not only does this give them a little bit of flexibility for trading, like for trading players if they were able to upgrade, it gives them a little bit of a core to kind of sell to veterans that might be looking for a spot. And again, I do think they have 2 of the better SMGs in the league. I would say like they're both up there. I think they're both probably in the top 15, top 10 for SMG players right now. And as a duo, they're really clicking, especially right now. The ARs will always be like a talking point. Interestingly, like TJ was the best player in stage 3. Obviously, in stage 4, it's been a little bit of the SMGs taking over. Zinni was the best player in stage 2, so they have been doing a decent job. It's not that they've been doing a bad job. It's just gonna be like there's gonna be a lot of veteran ARs on the market right now. My thing is like they'll actually be a decent landing spot for veterans. So it will be interesting to see if like a random SMG player or random flex player that gets left out, like how fast they pounce on that, and then if a team needs to make a move, because they still have capital, they still have like decent like young pieces on the squad, so they'll be able to, be a crucial part of this offseason no matter what. So it'll be interesting to see what their plans are.
Yeah. I was just looking at their stats for stage 4, and their respawn looks great. Like they were 9-6 in hardpoint, 5-3 in control. But what I've noticed is that since they got rid of Capsule, who was their best SND player all year, they've gone 4-8 in SND, and only TJ is positive. Nero had a 0.7 in stage 4 for SND. Vivid had a 0.85. Like that's just the only weak point right now. And so looking into next year, who's the player that you would actually get rid of if you were going to get rid of one to bring in like a veteran player? Because in my opinion, you can't really get rid of Zinni. And then the SMGs have been looking good. I think it depends on how they go at champs. But it's just been TJ's respawn has been just not really existent. So what do you guys reckon?
It just really depends on who's available. Like, let's say like Awakening's available for your flex player. I think you would be stupid not to make that call. If a player like Draza or Hook or Asim comes available in the SMG, I think you would be, dumb not to at least pick up the phone, have that conversation. It'll be interesting to see, like, because every offseason you think like, oh, it's not gonna be that crazy, and then like one big name player gets moved, right? Just one player, then instantly that spot is so coveted that everyone's plans to start changing. And that's what I mean. Like, this team actually has a decent core around it. They have a good, like, I like Zed, I like Dens. They have a good management there. They're trying to invest as much as possible, so they're going to be a decent spot to like land in. I'm kind of just looking through the rosters. Like, there is upgrades. Like, that's one thing that these guys will be obviously looking at, is like, can we upgrade? Is this worth it? Is the chemistry going to be there? How much of a hit that's going to take? So, and of course, they'll be looking at too, like, will teams be interested in some of our players? Will teams be interested in Capsule? Are we interested in Capsule for next year? Do we want to keep him and make like the academy team, like him and Doug on the academy team? Because that will be kind of a crucial part. Like, I actually think like academy teams for like the lower tier teams, I don't want to call them bad teams, but like the Minnesota this year, the obviously Paris, but I don't think they're going to invest in the academy team. But like Boston coming in, obviously we're the last team there. I think academy teams are worth it because you can take a risk on a young talent, who you might not know if he's good enough yet, but you can snag him before anyone else does. And that's something that we didn't really see in Cold War. And I think like there was a lot of teams that could have used that in Cold War because there was a lot of players that came up then. But I definitely think Boston will be one of the bigger players in the free agent market. Even if they don't make changes, they'll be at least having the discussions, and teams will be interested in going there just because they do have 2 decent SMGs like off the rip.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Damn, what's happening with Lion? He's back, baby. I mean, look, another team that could be in discussion is Toronto. I wanted to talk about them because I don't know what the situation for them will look like in terms of free agents next year. You're lying, good. But because they just aren't icy enough right now. Like, they lose every single close hardpoint you could possibly imagine, and they can't seem to clutch up unless they play the ultimate anti-ice team on LAN, which is London. I mean, they lost all their close hardpoint and their searches, losing like 250, 245s in hardpoints, 250, 240s, 6-5s in search. Like, they used to be the ultimate clutch team last year, and now they're honestly not that different to last season's Toronto. They just can't win clutches, and their hardpoint is way worse, which is making them place top 6 instead of top 2. Their control is still decent, their search and destroy is still decent, but like, they don't ice up as much as they did. And they're going to need like a miracle LAG game 5 type run if they want to do champs. Like, if they want to win champs, they're going to have to like just ice up game 5s because they're not going to be able to win series comfortably, which is not a recipe for success. So I wonder, like, look, this roster will have been together for 2 years after this point. Has it run its course? Because we don't know what the situation necessarily is with contracts. We have got Scrappy there on the bench. Insight probably hasn't been as good this year as he was last year. Neither has Cammy, albeit he did turn up lately. Bance has, I think, been great. Clinics is still the most probably the most raw talent on the team. So it's tough, really, because Toronto could again work next year as a team of 4. But I feel like if Toronto really are searching to win, then they might have to think about that one. Yeah, you're good, line. If you need to sort the audio, that's got a dip. Yeah, okay. Some sort of audio issue with line clearly here. He's going to be back. The screen might be messed up, but he's joining back in a second. So yeah, I mean, what do you think the plan should be for Toronto, Austin? Because if they actually want to win events, I think that they've got to switch something up. But I'm not really sure what you switch up, because your obvious change for Scrappy is for a player who's arguably the best in the role. So I don't know. I'm just hoping that like that one big free agent, either a Kleenex or a Cammy, comes out of this team and can shake up the market. But maybe that's wishful thinking on my part.
Yeah, something I am interested in is if Afro would be interested in going to Toronto, because that would be one of the bigger changes. I do think Toronto is going to probably stick all European. That's why I don't think Scrappy will be like inserted into that lineup. I do think Scrappy's probably going to be like sold. I think that whoever made that signing was really smart, because you instantly have one of the biggest pieces to sell or trade for next season instantly, and you have him under your control. That's why I was a little bit confused why Scrappy went there in the first place, because it just limits his freedom for probably a starting roster spot that isn't going to be there for him. But the major players coming out of EU challengers or EU players, you got to think Gizmo, Afro, are those players going to be interested in coming there? Personally, I think this has been Bance's probably like one of his best years we've seen. I thought he was good last year, but I think he's even better this year. I think this year, what's happening is they're like Cammy and Insight aren't playing as well. I think Insight has been absolutely phenomenal in S&D, like playing crazy. But I don't think they've been playing as well, and I think their teamwork is lacking. And I think they're trying to play more of a traditional style Call of Duty. And part of me thinks like maybe they just had a really bad year, and like maybe they should stick it out. Like you're not going to be able to be good every single year. And part of me just thinks that's the case, and that they should rerun it for next year. But I just know how like players can get antsy when they aren't, they're not. Obviously, this Toronto team does not want to be placing where they're placing. They want to be higher than that. So I know that is always going to be a conversation. But the clear cut one is I would be really interested in seeing what Afro's plans are, because obviously this is going to be his second year at London. Unless he signed a new deal last season, he would be a free agent this year. I could see him coming in for either Kleenex or Bance if Kleenex goes somewhere else. And who knows? I actually think like Kleenex or Afro and Bance could be a really good SMG duo too, or Kleenex and Afro. They would just be really hyper aggressive. So it makes sense on both ends. Personally, if you don't get Afro, I would not make a change if I'm over there.
Yeah, it's strange with this team, because last year with this roster, they didn't finish outside the top 3 once. This year they finished in the top 3 once. And it's like each player is strong in a particular game mode. Maybe Bance is the only one that's slightly behind in stats, but then he's like clearly the most icy player on this team. And so it's like there's never been a clear option for them to change. There hasn't really been the perfect player to come in and make it better as well. And so they're sticking it out because they know the potential of this team. I agree with what you said earlier. I think that it's probably the best option to keep the team as it is, because regardless of how good Scrappy is, I probably still wouldn't replace Insight or Cammy with him right now unless this team started placing top 8 consistently. Like they always seem to find a way to be like reasonably good at an event, to like get a top 6, a top 4, without even looking like at their peak. And so I just feel like making a change for this team would be kind of silly. But if it comes that way and like contracts and whatever, it would be kind of sad to see this team fall apart, because we've seen the potential, and it would be sad. But for stage 4, I mean, yeah. Oh, Splice 2017 is pretty good.
Toronto have it covered, I think, longevity-wise. But
yeah. Well, this is probably the longest-lasting EU roster, maybe. Like
I guess so. Yeah, I guess so.
Because usually, back in like the CWL, they'll just like trade them amongst themselves, And they'll be like,
yeah, they're the same like 8 players, red reserve, just like okay, exactly. You can have Josh now. We'll have Josh back. You can have Zero now. We'll have
Unilad, take scraps. We'll keep busting. Yeah. And so it was just like this big old fucking toss around. But Yeah, this is the last stage. It was really like, I'm looking at the stats. Like, no one played bad in like all three modes. They all had a mode that they were really strong at, and so it's just kind of, I don't know, what do you do? It's just that it seems like there's no cohesion across all modes, but it's players standing out in each mode. Like Insight had a 0.9 in hardpoint and then a 1.4 in control. It's like, how does that? I don't know. So I don't know what to do with this team. I just wouldn't, want to see them make a rogue change because they have so much potential as they are.
Yeah, that's why I only think they would be able to steal players from London. Like, I think London is a good team that takes from the challenger scene, and then I think Toronto is still the better team that most of them would. It's like the moving up the ladder kind of. Not to say that London can't be the number one team, and then Toronto turn into that, but it seems like London's done a good job of like recruiting and getting the best challengers players. I wonder if they make any changes, like, you have Beans, Vortex has been there for a while. I know he goes by Steve-O, I think now, but Denza, Furious, there's actually a ton of like good EU challengers players. Even like I really, really hope Scraps comes back next season, because honestly I think it was a huge mistake from Paris not keeping Scraps. He might not be like the best player, but he's extremely consistent and he's a good slayer, and he's a good player to have on your team. So
that should be fire if that happens.
Yeah. So I am interested to see what the shuffle, if there even is one, between Toronto and London. And that's kind of what sucks about having only two English teams, like really English teams, like English core teams in the league, or European teams. Because if we had at least one more, it'd be good to see like the trio of teams and how that cycle is. But it'll be interesting, because there is a bunch of pieces that could be swapped there. I could see a bunch of different moves.
So we'd go back to CWL era of tossing around British players.
That's what
until like a super team comes out of it.
Honestly,
I mean, Toronto was that super team. And
I know.
Now they're not.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were never going to be able to keep up that level. I think like that Cold War just suited them particularly well. So it's just a question for them, like, what do they want to do as an organization? Do they want to actually be competing for championships regularly, or are they satisfied with being top 6, maybe top 4? Like, it's a question they've got to ask, but I don't think
who's going to compete for championships. Who's going to compete for championships consistently? No team this year other than FaZe has been able to do that, and FaZe is the best team pretty much we've ever seen in COD history. So it's
it's true. And Toronto did win the kickoff, but like
what they do, they're going to probably still struggle at parts during the year, no matter what team they have. So I don't know if they make a change. Is it going to be worth it? Is it going to be worse?
Last year they were mad consistent though. Like, think about last season, they were top 3 every event after they made the Insight change. Every event they were top 3 or better. Like, that's crazy consistency. And yes, this is Vanguard, but like, I don't think they're ever going to have a season like that again. So that's why I think that all the teams should be at least considering a change. Like, apart from, I think OpTic are going to stick regardless. FaZe are going to stick regardless. Even Thieves, we will talk about them, because I think that like even Thieves, depending on what happens at Champs, have to at least have one eye on the market, because you never know who's going to come along. So you might be able to have a good idea who's coming along. Let's talk OpTic though. They went 3-1. They iced up against Minnesota and Toronto. Scump made a big play against Boston to beat them 3-1. Got thoroughly outplayed by FaZe for the first time this season in their match. They eventually fell at top 4, which is probably better than I expected, to be honest. I mean, like, their victories weren't particularly impressive, to be honest. Their only decent win was against what felt like against Toronto, where they managed to beat them in a Bacage hardpoint. Look, strange tournament for them. Shotzi finally turned up from Sunday onwards. He was pretty bad online and even in the Minnesota series, but they got him through that one. And then he actually really turned up through the rest of the tourney. So that's a positive sign. Their search was very clutch. There were honestly glimpses in that search and destroy, and occasionally the respawns of the stage 1 OpTic where they were super efficient. They would take their time. Shotzi would get the openings, and they would play around that. And they converted a lot of relatively impressive victories, and they clutched up some round 11s, which was a surprise to me. Even they did do their best to choke a couple of those series with some of the 1v3s they're thrown away to Bants especially. But the respawn was just tragic. Like, it was, I mean, the control is still awful, and it's the whole Berlin Bacage debate, right? There's been a lot of talk about this, the fact that maybe they didn't want to play Berlin because they would have had the lower seed, therefore they have to start on the bad side, which maybe is an argument, but if you're actually confident on the map, you will chat it anyway, because Bacage, I guess they think Bacage is a 50-50, but the fact of the matter is, they're just not good enough at hardpoint to make Bacage work. Like, if they to win a Bacage, OpTic need to outslay by like 20 kills. Like, if they played Paris and outslayed by like 50 and won by 40 points or something mad like that, like, if they go even in the slaying, they're gonna lose because they just play some weird hardpoint game where they just don't seem to like getting in the hill that much, and they just rely heavily on the slaying. And when you play a team that's gonna equal you in the slaying, they're just going to lose the map. So I really think that they've got to think about what they're doing there, because Berlin is the actual outplay hardpoint map here. And they've really got to think about bringing it into the map pool. It's not just because they need to be more confident in actually having those maps in their vetoes, but it's also like, if you want to win champs, you've got to win a best of 9 grand finals, and you're going to play a Berlin hardpoint in there. So you've got to be good at it. Like, you can't just avoid it if you want to win champs. So, you know, they're 1 in 3 on Bacage hardpoint, 1 in 3 in control. I don't buy the idea they were just getting practice in on Bacage, because, I mean, look, Berlin they've also got to get practice on Berlin, right? Like, Berlin's going to be a key map for them. We saw what Thieves did. Like, that was a big part of their run. So, like, the placement, I think, can be encouraging for OpTic. I think there were a few encouraging things here, but you know, they've only got a couple of weeks to turn this around and make their respawn competitive. And it's going to need to be. So I don't know. Other teams have more momentum, and they're also in a better starting position for these final 2 weeks of grind. And it feels like a very classic OpTic season. Although I almost feel like top 4 flatters them a bit here. Is that harsh to say, Austin?
No, because honestly, I wasn't impressed with how they played at all. I think their, saving grace was their S&D where they went 5-1. But for them right now, it's like pick your poison, where they're really good at Bocage and Tuscan. Besides that, I think like that's the 2 maps there. Their S&D really, or their hardpoint wasn't that impressive, and their control was really lackluster compared to especially compared to how it was before. And I know I keep seeing everyone say, but like Atlanta's is not that impressive. Like I don't think I think we made a lot of mistakes as well. I don't think either one of these teams is sitting here tooting our own horns currently. Especially considering the placements that, OpTic's obviously had, and then what we just had. So I think both teams expected better. I think, like, obviously we went 7-2 if you take out Berlin hardpoint. We went 7-2 in hardpoint, 5-1 in control, but then 2-5 in S&D. They went 4-4 in hardpoint, 1-3 in control, and then 5-1 in S&D. So obviously they're going to be a very good S&D team. They're probably going to have to develop either a Siege or Berlin though. Because those are the 2 maps they were 0-1 on Berlin. They didn't play Siege because teams are going to veto either Bocage or Tuscan, and then you're going to have to play one of the maps that you're not as comfortable with. On the hardpoint side, I don't think we're going to see them play much Bocage. They're allergic to the hill. I don't think you're going to see much Bocage. The promising thing is like they're going to be a good Gavutu team. They're going to be a good Tuscan team, but the problem is every good team in the CDL right now. I got an ambulance going by, so.
You're good. You're looking like Lion out here with the police and that.
Yeah. but every good team right now in the CDL wants to play Gavutu and Tuscan. So when you have your vetoes, you're gonna be saying, do we want to play a Berlin, which we don't play, or do we want to play a Bocage, which we haven't had the results on? Or are we going to play the maps that other teams are good at? So like these 2 weeks are actually really important for every single team, including our team. Any team that is still in COD Champs, it's going to be very crucial for you to develop your map pool, because you don't want to put yourself in the pickle where you're playing a map where either A, you're uncomfortable on, or B, the other team's extremely good on. You have to be well-rounded. So that's going to be both of our teams, any team in this league. It's not really a competition right now for who's better, because at the end of the day, Champs is going to show like who's the best team. So they're obviously going to have to work on that. It's a little bit concerning where their control is right now compared to what it was at the beginning of the year. If they can develop their control, even if their hard point stays the same, if their control gets much better to where it was before, they can get by with a really good control in S&D just because of how good their S&D is right now. But that's going to be something where they're going to have to just get better at the respawns. Find that just as like we're going to have to get better at our S&D and hard point, honestly.
Yeah, like you mentioned OpTic's S&D, but at the major, they had some outliers in stats which made them like kind of flattered their S&D game. Like Shotzi had a 1.75, getting 1.13 kills around, that doesn't happen. Dashy went 7-0 in First Bloods and had a 1.25, and then you got Scump who had a 0.69, who went 1-8 in First Bloods, and then Illy had a 0.9. And he went 12-1 in First Bloods. And it's like all these weird stats.
What's going on? What is going on
that are playing in their favor, but in reality, it doesn't seem like they're actually too strong in Search and Destroy. They're just having really good moments. I don't know if that's unfair, but it just seems like that's their strongest mode right now, and that they only were that strong at this event because of certain players popping off. In Hardpoint, they're extremely positive in KD, and in kills per 10 minutes, like they're really strong, except their hill time for all their players is like very mediocre. It's all around 50, 60. They don't have a player that's dedicated to the hill. It seems like their focus is on getting the kills and then pushing out, and then not actually getting the time, which is quite unusual. And then their control gameplay is just like really, really shit at the moment. They used to be so good at Tuscan. They could rely on that at all points. Like they were a guaranteed map 3 for like the first 2 stages. And then now it's like, especially in this game, like control is like that swing game mode more than it's ever been in COD. Like how many reverse sweeps have we seen this year? Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah. All starts
OpTic
with control.
OpTic don't have that right now to like rely on, like that banker map. So their hard point is just like 50-50. The SND is looking good, but it's like, will it stay that good? We don't know. And then control, they're really bad. So
and they play Ultra round 1 at Champs, which is like Game 5, round 11 this time. Ultra lost the hard point by 5 points. Like,
I also don't want us to be like Debbie Downers too. Like they got another good tournament out of Dashy. Shotzi looked really good at the tail end of the tournament. They were 1-0 in Gavutu. They still look good on that map. They were 2-1 on Tuscan. Obviously 5-0 in Bocage and Tuscan S&D combined. So there is some positives, and again, you started in the losers bracket, but that's still no excuse. You had a really good win. I thought Boston was a very strong team going into the tournament. You had a good win over them. The Minnesota one, it's whatever, but in the Toronto one, they made you work for it. But it was a good like win to like clutch out. Like sometimes series are just not going to be clean. So like there was still a lot of positives. It's just you have to really work hard the next 2 weeks. Obviously, that's like it's a dumb thing to say, but like you have to work hard the next couple weeks. Really just expand your map pool and make it so your vetoes are not so one-dimensional, to make it so you're more comfortable across all the maps, so you don't get stuck just playing like Bocage, where you can kind of pin teams into playing your good map if it's their bad map. So it's really hard to do with only 4 maps in the map pool. It's extremely difficult, but that's going to be their main objective going to the next. We only really have a week and a half of practice.
Yeah, it's big. I mean, that's the thing really about like all the teams is that OpTic are just in a situation where what they currently have in their arsenal is not enough to win champs. Like, if they can bring a couple of things in, like the Berlin, the control, then they've got the toolkit. But they're missing a couple of crucial things. But, maybe they can turn it around quick. They just got to put in the time.
I mean, they look way better than they did in qualifiers. So that's a bonus. Like, their learning curve from not having Illy for ages is obviously quite strong. It just seems like only S&D right now is the thing that they've somewhat picked up again, which is the easiest mode to pick up as a team. Control, I think this year, Hardpoint, kind of random because of the respawn and the spawns and all that. But the Control is the one mode that I think takes the most teamwork, and they really need to find that before champs. And I think they can. So
yeah, they're too good of a team to like write off. And I don't want to make it seem like we're just like knocking them constantly, because we're not. It seems weird, but you knock them because you expect greatness. It's what every like star player in every sport gets. You expect them to be up here. Even my own team, it's every team that's like supposed to be like a tournament winning team. It's the same thing what we're gonna do with Seattle in a bit. It's the same thing that we said with LAG after they won stage 2. You expect them to be at a certain level, and sometimes they're still playing at a good level, but they're just not where you want them to be, and you want to like say like we still expect a little bit more. And that's what I'm gonna say about my team when we talk about it. What we say about Seattle, I don't want it to seem like we're just being very, very negative about Texas. It's because it's a group of such good players and coaches that they just have to get a couple more tools in the tool chest, just as Rab said.
Yeah, and OpTic's my favorite team. Like, of course, I want them to do well. It's just like this last stage was very hard to watch, and it's been a really tough year since Major 1 for OpTic. So it's just like a bit of pessimism is sticking in there, but optimistic for the rest of the year for champs.
Yeah, it's like, this is why Paris, I'll make fun of Paris because they're just bad and pathetic. Whereas the other top teams like Thieves, obviously Seattle in this boat, FaZe, OpTic are all in that category of, Seattle maybe not so much, but the other organizations certainly are. They should be up there. This is why FaZe, whenever they lose, get roasted, and Thieves, especially as an organization, have been getting absolutely battered for 2 seasons now because they come in back as 100 Thieves as an organization with all the talk about how, no, we're not a hoodie org, we're here to win, all this, and having in their previous season been one of the dominant forces. They come in last year, flop heavily, and the same thing this season. And, that's why they're getting roasted so heavily, right? I don't care about roasting Florida as much as I do Thieves when they're not performing because they should be at that level, right? And OpTic are in a similar situation where, as Austin said, greatness is expected. When it's not, everyone's going to talk about it. That is sports, baby. Let's do Seattle, as you mentioned them, because I didn't really have them listed here just because it's a kind of a same old story, but I think we should talk about it because it's in a similar boat really to Boston, right? Or maybe not exactly the same as Boston, but so what do they do next year? They've got Pred, who's like playing like all-star talent, no doubt, on the all-star team of the season, best SMG in the game right now, probably. Sib has also been great for them. Mac generally turns up a bit on LAN. And then accuracy's been good, but even last year, the question was, is he going to be a coach? Is he going to play again? And maybe that question gets raised again at the end of the season. So they won an event, but they come top 12 here yet again, I think. I mean, they didn't have the greatest qualifiers either. And they come in here and they play they lose to Seattle, or they lose to Boston, day 2 in a game 5. Tough for Seattle, right? I mean, I still, whenever I see and hear this team, I still feel like it's kind of scary. But it's in the same way that Toronto are kind of scary, in that you kind of know what they're capable of, but never really deliver against the top teams. So yeah, they've just what exactly has fallen off about their play, do you think, Austin? Because when you see them play Bacage, they still seem just as good. Is it like this they're not clutching up in their search as much as they were, or their control isn't as good nowadays?
Oh yeah, I think it. First thing you look at is S&D. For this event, Lamar had a 0.14 in S&D, and Pred had a 0.38, and they just weren't effective. Obviously, it's a very, very small sample size. It's kind of unfair to point
that's
out
2 maps though. That's still 2 maps.
Yeah, it's still 2 maps, and those 2 players, Lamar and Pred, went 1-10 in opening duels. So they just weren't cutting it in S&D, and that was kind of like a thorn in their side. Their respawns are really, really good. That's why I'm not too overly concerned. I was a little bit concerned with Mac in the qualifiers, but he's such a LAN player that I'm really not worried when they get onto LAN. I know what they're going to get. It's always just going to be consistency with this team, how consistently well they can play, and their map pool. I still think they're a very good control team, and I think if you are a good control team, you are going to be able to go far in this game. And I think it was the same thing last year. That's why us and Toronto were the 2 best control teams. We literally had the record for best 3rd game mode ever, and so did Toronto was right up there. So I think that still carried over. It's a thing in every Call of Duty. So I still have faith that Seattle can make a deep run, and almost if there was a tournament tomorrow, I would still pick Seattle to go really deep in it. Their thing is that they're going to have to get better at be more consistent in S&D, and I just want to see. Obviously, everyone's going to want to see where their hardpoint map pool is, but their hardpoint map pool I'm interested in because obviously they're probably one of the scariest teams. Us and them on Bocage. But if they develop a Berlin, because I know they don't play Kavutu, so if I do want to see where their Berlin and Tuscan is, because obviously right now the easy veto would be Bocage. I think you could say that about my team as well. But like Kavutu is they don't play, so it's like I do want to see if they're Berlin or Tuscan, like how that matches up, because they lost Berlin versus Boston, and that's why I said like I thought Boston was a really good team coming into this tournament. Like that was a good like win for Boston. That was an excellent win. That's why I don't knock like the loss to Seattle too much. It's just I definitely want to see them their S&D will have to get tuned up a little bit, and then whether Berlin or Tuscan is going to be their second map. It's the same thing with like Texas with their Bocage and Tuscan and S&D. You have to pick your poison. I want to see what they'll have to pick. They'll have to get another poison for their hard point, because right now it's just Bocage, and if they can develop one more, it's going to make them such a better team, because they'll always have that map 3 to fall back on as well.
Yep. I was just looking at their Major 4 S&D stats. Yeah, I mean, they went 2 and 6 for the stage, and then Pred and Accuracy had 0.7s. So not good. But then we looked at Pred and Respawn. He's got a 1.3 for Major 4, like in hardpoint and in control.
Yeah.
But you said that their hardpoint's still strong, or their Respawn in general. Their hardpoint's actually not being strong. They're 3 and 7 across Major 4. And they lost so they had 2 Game 5s in Major 3, and they won them both. And then they had 2 Game 5s in Major 4, and they lost them both. And so it just feels like they need that momentum to really get them going. And when they don't have that, they kind of just drop off and lose confidence. And that's been like a trend throughout the season for this team, is that they really run high on momentum, and then they always rely on their control to get them through to like a Game 4, and then push that momentum to a Game 5, and then yeah, it's been a very strange season for them, because they've Respawn, regardless if they win or lose, their slaying is ridiculous. They just don't seem to be objective heavy a lot of the time. And I don't know. I really want to see this team do well because of, APAC, ANZ. But yeah, Pred's killing it. It's just his S&D again is falling short. And he found that in Major 3. Like the Major 3 LAN, like during the qualifiers for Major 3, he was really, really bad at S&D and great at Respawn. And then he went to the Major and was great at S&D and kind of okay at Respawn. And then in this, obviously, they didn't get the opportunity to find out how good they were at Major 4 LAN, because they got bopped. Because they got, reverse swept, didn't they?
I believe so, yeah. Oh, no, because they lost S&D. I think it was 1-1, 2-1, and then after that, they lost the final 2.
Oh, yeah. So, but they really should have won that match or won that series. But they didn't. Yeah. So it's really tough viewing at the moment, because they're on a 5-match losing streak, and before that they were on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 winning streak.
Really? Wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So they went from 9 wins to 5 losses. Just like that. They lost that Boston series 1-3, second match of qualifiers, and then it went downhill from there.
Yeah.
I want to say Vanguard, but at the same time, like that's you just fell off. Like
that's consistency right there. That's good then bad.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and I again, like they're 2 and for stage 4 overall. They're 2 and 6 in S&D. They're 3 and 7 in hardpoint, but they're 1 and 4 on Berlin and Tuscan. So like that's the thing. Like you have a really good map on Bocage, but you have to open up. You have to be able to open that map up. You have to be good at 2 maps, so you kind of can pick your poison. You force teams into a corner. That's what they don't have, and that's why. Like when you don't play Kavutu and you have to veto Kavutu, and then other teams are vetoing Bocage, you're going to continue getting Berlin and Tuscan in every series. And it's just going to be tough for them to have to rely on control and stealing away other maps. It's just going to be tough for them.
Yeah, they had one positive map, as in like positive record on a map, the whole stage, and that was Tuscan control. So if you get rid of that, this team doesn't really have much right now to fight you. So, scary.
The benefit for them is like that they play Ravens round 1, and if they do get Game 5 there, like if there's one team that I'd expect to collapse in a Game 5 on LAN with the pressure on at Champs, it's probably London, right? So like that could be a start of a surge. Let's talk about one of the teams they could play if they win that, which would be the Atlanta FaZe, baby. Austin's back in business. The team made a run to top 3, and again, the only team you guys lost to were the champions of the event, but this time we lost to them twice in winners round 1 and then in the losers finals. So yeah, the second place curse is gone, but and it's interesting really, only losing to champs to the winners sounds good, but then obviously it's 4 different teams, so that also is a bit of a factor as well. But it's interesting to me because that like LA Thieves series was like very comfortable. I thought like the way they just manhandled you lot in control was like we haven't seen a team do that in a long period of time. I was very impressed by Thieves in both series they played, and I was thinking the first series like, damn, what's going on here? Thieves just godlike, and then turns out yeah, they're actually godlike. Apparently nowadays, I mean, the Kenny SMG was the factor seemingly, but it's interesting really. Like, I don't know what your perspective on this is, Austin, but just looking at the FaZe team, like everyone is kind of prone to a bad series right now, apart from Cell. Like Abiti goes off one series, next series he struggles. Simp goes off one series, struggles. Like Arstees is like sometimes he's on, sometimes he's not. I mean, look, the storylines are aligned for you guys to win champs. But it would be quite incredible if you don't manage to, given all the other teams that have done, given the average placings. So, look, I don't think that's going to affect the roster next year, but things come to an end eventually. I don't think that's going to be anytime soon, but still, I think pressure will start to rise if you guys can't get a result. That's all I'll say.
No, I mean, like this major at the end of the day, it sucks. It really does suck. Like I'm pretty upset. We obviously haven't gotten the results we expect, and that's kind of crazy when you say second, third. But like it still sucks. But at the end of the day, like if we win champs, I don't. It'll still feel amazing, and it'll still feel like we were the best team all year. It just sucks. Like again, like our S&D really wasn't that great this weekend. We were still making mistakes. I still thought there was some games that we could have stolen away. I feel like obviously our control was extremely good up until that last LA series. They played a terrific Tuscan there. But before that we were playing terrific in control. So I look at that as a positive. The hard points, like even though we had a good hard point record, that we were still making mistakes. There's still a lot of stuff to clean up. I mean, at the end of the day, like our wins were against Paris, LAG, Florida, and Texas. Like it's not really like the cream of the crop. Like they were good wins, obviously, but like it's not the very best teams. So we're gonna have to keep not like rest on like, oh, we had another good placing. Like we have to continue pushing, and that's what we're doing already. Like we're already practicing today. We're already back at it. It's going to be a grind. On a positive note, like besides Berlin hardpoint, we were 7-2 in hardpoint, 5-1 in Tuscan control. So a lot of positives, but it's the same thing as OpTic. Like we're going to continue pushing. You have to like this is when it matters. I don't want to look back at I don't want to look back at 3 weeks and say we could have given it more. So like that's my thing. We're going to keep pushing like crazy this week, and our S&D like again like it. There were so many rounds we could have won. It's the mid-round stuff where we just have to get on the same page for some of the calls, like some were what we're doing. Post plants, there were some that we kind of lost. It's not like crucial like game-breaking mistakes. Like our record was 2-5, but in all honesty, it felt like we could have won a couple more of those. It could have been definitely like a 3-4, 4-3 record at the end of the day. But yeah, it's just about improving the I don't like our macro strategy is good. It's sound. It's just like playing a bunch of the smaller situations on the same page, improving communication. There's a bunch of little things because if you let the little things compound, then that's how you lose series. And unfortunately, we kind of got mopped in that map 3. Berlin, we played Berlin bad side versus LA Thieves twice. We were 0-2 on it versus them. So it sucks, but you got to move past it. We have a tournament in 2 weeks, so got to keep the ball moving. But it's the same thing. I don't want to seem too biased. It's the same thing as OpTic. It's the same thing as Seattle. Like nothing's perfect right now. We're not sitting here like excited about a third place or like excited about being 12-5 in respawns. There's so much stuff we can fix in our respawns. There's a lot of stuff we can fix across everything and communication. But it is what it is. Can't change the past, can't change the third place. So moving forward.
Yeah, I mean Salium was ridiculous at this during the whole qualifier. He had a 1.27 in hardpoint, 1.22 in S&D, and then a 1.29 in control. Ridiculous. But then you look on the other side, and R-Cities is having a bit of a tougher time. 0.94 in hardpoint, 0.89 in search, and a 0.89 in control. I'm just wondering if you could touch on that. Do you think that Celium playing at that level is somewhat of a detriment, just like it was last year to our cities, or do you think that they're actually on the same sort of page?
Well, yeah, it's like there's only so many kills on the map. But like also like again like sometimes the way our system is like if we're not on the same page at all times, like it's gonna hurt the players. Even if you're playing, if you individually are playing perfect, if the team's not playing perfect around you, it's gonna make the game harder for yourself. And like the way Alec plays is he's not the one that's gonna be like sliding in. He's not the one that's gonna be set up for some of these kills. He's gonna be the one that's making some of the dirty work. Like that's how our whole team does. I'm not like his individual, like what his KD might be. Like he brings tenfold to what he brings like elsewhere. He's one of the highest like damage dealers on our team. He does a lot of other stuff on the map. It's the same thing with Tyler and Chris. Like a lot of people look at their KDs, but they've been playing good. Like they've been playing really good. But we just have to tighten up our team system and how we're playing some situations. And once we do that, like our individual statistics are just going to skyrocket because right now we're handicapping ourselves by making some mistakes that are making the game harder for ourselves. And if we can clear that up, it's going to really free up, a lot of our players to individually to start shining again. So I'm really not worried about anything individual. I firmly believe we have 4 of the best players in the entire world. It's literally it's at the end of the day, it's a system game. If we can get on the same page and continue playing well, it's going to allow our players to shine. So I'm really not worried about anyone individually. It's just playing like clean Call of Duty on the team level, and that makes the game easier for everybody else. And that's what you saw with LA this past weekend. They again, I feel like we've been saying this on the podcast for a while now. They play one of the best individual like team games of Call of Duty. It's just their individual, like they were not icing up in certain situations, or they make some mistakes here or there, but like overall they will always play a really good team Call of Duty game. And you saw it like this past weekend. Like they allowed the other team to be making mistakes. They were capitalizing on it. So so if you play a cleaner game of Call of Duty, even if you are not playing the best version of Call of Duty, but you as a team are communicating properly and doing stuff together, it makes it easier for your players. So yeah, overall, I'm really not worried about anybody on our team. I just know if we tighten some stuff up the next week and a half, then it'll look a lot different, come champs, hopefully.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, look, let's do New York next, baby, because it's about time we talk about the absolute losers bracket run from the heavens. They made it, well, it wasn't actually losers bracket run, but just the bracket run from being down in the dumps. And the greatest thing about this is that they had to battle against so much adversity because all the teams around them started winning. They went 4-1 in qualifiers and barely made any progress because you lot were gifting LAG 3 wins, OpTic were gifting 3 wins. Like everyone was trying not to make Crim make champs, right? Trying to sabotage him. But Crim doesn't care, man. He turns up, and in fairness, like they got lucky with their bracket in a way. The fact that they were able to drop both Rocker and Florida down to losers. Florida got lucky in any way to somehow beat Boston there, because like they were no real value for their top 6, I thought, but they still managed to put up 20 points, which did mean that New York had to make the finals at a minimum. But they reverse sweep Rocker. The home crowd definitely played its part, I think, to a degree, but they played great COD, and the MVP of this weekend for them by far was Kismet, right? Crim did his thing. Hydra was solid. Paul X, like statistically, I don't think was dropping the greatest numbers, and he himself agreed he wasn't playing great COD this weekend, but Crim was giving a lot of credit for his assists. But Kismet was like, honestly, he hard carried in like every mode, in like every stat category. Like this guy, man, that Berlin hardpoint against Thieves, the one to qualify for champs, that might be the best individual map of, like, I want to see his POV the whole map. Like that might be one of the best maps of COD that like a player has played in the last 2 years. Unbelievable. He was if you look at the numbers for that map, he had 71 engagements. The next highest on his team had like 50 or like 48, or that was maybe the ARs, but both Crim and Paul X had like 50 engagements. He had 71, 41 kills, 30 deaths, 4,500 damage, 2 minutes in the hard point, and he was getting like impactful 3 pieces. Like, this guy was actually doing it all on the map. And it wasn't just that. Like, put him in a 1v2 in search, he's going to win it every time as well. So, yeah, Kismet was the factor, right? And this is, it's awesome to see a Paris refugee, if I must say, manages to escape that camp and brings it all the way back to become one of the best players in the game the last stage. So it's fantastic. Okay, the word I put down on my note too was escapee, so maybe that's more appropriate here. But I mean, yeah, like look, the pace fell off in the finals a bit once the job was done. Like they made the finals. I know that Crim was obviously gunning. He wanted to keep up his incredible grand finals record, but they just ran into a better team at the end of it, right? Like they were. It's weird to me because the team from losers should have the momentum advantage, but often it seems in these grand finals it's the team from winners that actually starts out better. But Thieves eventually, it just felt like they fell off a little bit. Individually, Hydra didn't really turn up and they fall short. But at the end of the day, they got the job they needed to get done here complete. And it's officially on now, right? Crim can go for the absolute gold mine of all storylines where they somehow qualify for champs and then go on to win the thing. And they find themselves in a position where, obviously, like being the 8th seed is never going to be great. You're going to play FaZe round 1, but FaZe have one of the harder round 1 games of any team, given what we've most recently seen. So, yeah, congratulations to New York, man. They deserve it as an organization. I want to give credit to Daryl as well from a coaching perspective, because he became the head coach of this team halfway through the year. And they still don't have it on the graphics for some reason. But I think the Revan and what's the name again? JP are playing more of a supporting role now, search and destroy and stuff. And I think Dorilla's must have been a crucial factor why this team has managed to turn it around. So, because it would have been easy to manage that internal environment this season with the way things were looking, and especially keeping their heads screwed on when you need 90 points from your final stage to qualify for champs, having got 70 all season, and all the teams around you are delivering results. Like that's impressive from everyone involved in the organization. So yeah, congrats to New York, Austin. Let's go.
Yeah. Like I just first off, like they had an amazing weekend. Congrats to them. Wow, that was one hell of a run. I really did not think New York had a chance to make it to champs. But they did it, and it was a terrific run. And shout out like Kismet. Kismet played. I think he was their best player all weekend. He's been phenomenal. It merely really makes me wonder, because he was saying that Paris could have picked up the entire Texas Nation team, which was him, Havoc, Brezzy, and General. And I personally think Brezzy is the best amateur player not picked up right now. And obviously we saw what Havoc just did. With Minnesota. If Paris had those 3 or those 4, because General played really well at the Pro-Am too, who knows? That Paris team might have been able to at least contend for some wins, for some more wins. But
put up another win.
Yeah, Kismet played terrific. He played really well. Hydra and Paul and Crim played terrific. They played really well. Even though they didn't win the tournament, they still put up a good fight. LA was just too hot this past weekend. They really found some momentum. I think it really came from their S&D. They've always been a good respawn team. They've always fundamentally been a very good team. It was just about making the individuals click within that system, and they really found that this weekend. And then they had S&D in the back pocket to really take over. And they were obviously again a good control team, which helps you a lot in these series. And so. Even though they fell to LA, I think this was a terrific performance by them. They can really build on it. It does suck for them that they have to face off against us. I mean, you can look at it 2 ways. You can look at it, you're going to have to play every team and beat every team at champs anyways. And by starting off against a really hard team, it can give you the momentum to, fly this weekend just to really catch that momentum. So that's how we're looking at it, at least. Like, we have a hard team, but like that can build your momentum right off the rip. So I'm sure they're looking at it the same way. So, good luck to them next weekend. And, it's just honestly, again, like, just congrats to them for just having a great weekend and scraping it right by to make it the champs. Because that must have been so stressful. Like, I can't even imagine the stress of having to do that the last month, because you really needed it. So, congrats to them.
Yeah, honestly, I had zero faith that they would do it. They were so far behind in points. And especially after they lost their last qualifier game to LA Thieves, like, I thought that was it, and you could see by their face cams that they thought this is going to be tough now. But then they came into this major, looked amazing. It was their SND looked really strong, which is amazing to see, because it's the first time really all year that they've kind of looked strong in that. Their hard point was just as strong. It just seems like control, they're a little bit unsure of what to do. Hydra is the only one that's really like playing great in control. But yeah, looking at Search and Destroy, their first bloods, even though they're like kind of even, they're still winning most of their maps. So it's really just like their mid-round adjustments. They're doing really well. And then in Hardpoint, Kismet was ridiculous. He had the most hill time with 94 seconds. He had the most kills with 30 per 10 minutes and had a 1.14 KD and the most engagements by like 8. So he's doing it all in Hardpoint. He's making Hydra look like the slow, not so effective SMG, which is crazy to think about. It just seems like they need to find their control, just like OpTic. Yeah. So I think they'll be able to do that. It's just, their map pool their map pool's like very wide. And that's the one thing I really like about New York now is that they're not just like a one-trick pony. They almost have it all. They just need to be more consistent in control if they really want to contend for champs. And I think playing Atlanta round 1 could be potentially a hurdle, but I'm excited to see that matchup straight away anyway.
Yeah, that's the thing with like them too. Is like Hydra was never like an entry SMG. Like he might have had like flashy movement, but he was always more of a kill heavy SMG, like Slayer. He was their Slayer. So finding a SMG, which I think this is what they wanted Neptune to be, but someone who's objective heavy, because Hydra's really not going to be playing the objective much. He's always going to be trying to, get the slaying up. But like Kismet playing the objective so heavily and also being a Slayer at that is just amazing. And then you've had Paul, even though he wasn't that good, like slaying wise this weekend, was doing that role too with Hydra. And then you have Crim and Kismet doing like the dirty work, the objective work. Like it just really worked. It clicked. Like it just how he plays clicks with Hydra, because Hydra's always gonna be the Slayer, like heavy slaying, slower SMG that plays like the power points. And then you have Kismet that's just flying around trying to get bomb plants, trying to get in the hill. Like that works. That duo works really, really well.
Agreed. Let's talk about the winners then. LA Thieves, baby. And this is honestly the key thing to me about this run is that Kenny might not play like this for the rest of the season, but it did feel like the key weaknesses that we've described this team having all season in terms of number one, the SMGs not really performing very well, despite the fact that their comms seem very good. Second of all, their search and destroy was woeful at times. Fixing up on those two key things has done wonders for their respawn. Like they always kind of had the pieces, like they've been looking much better LAN by LAN. And they obviously much better on LAN than they are online anyway. But for them to put it all together this weekend and to fix seemingly what are some of their key problems makes me think that this isn't an LAG type victory. I think this is a legit win. And I mean, look, we'll do our power rankings here in a second as we kind of go towards the World Championship. But like, honestly, unreal performance from the whole team. Kenny was by far the MVP. Maybe not even by far, because Draza was fantastic as well. Like Draza deserves a lot of credit for his performance this weekend. He had some huge series. And he's one of those players that I think is not exactly a Kismet type player, but he's one of those players in the role where he's a very serviceable player in that role. He's going to do his job. He's going to have his big series sometimes. He's not going to necessarily be a star, but put him alongside stars and he can be a championship winning player. And he's achieved that here, which is awesome for him, given his, coming from Alaska, like moving out, trying to make it happen on OGLA. And then like, it's awesome to see these stories, right? And he's got a great personality as well. Octane deserves a lot of credit because his comms, man, when we went to a listening, I was creaming listening to some of these comms. Like it was just beautiful to listen to. You got like, wow. I mean, the call that he's making, like the rotating guys, watch this, watch that. It's like, imagine having that, as nice as being a fast-paced SMG and having that in your ear, telling you what to do and telling you what they're looking at. Like, that was beautiful. I'm sure they were loving it as well. And then Envoy, he's been great this season, but I think has been struggling when Kenny's been struggling. Like, it feels like they kind of live and die on each other on the SMGs. And when Kenny turned up and was just an unreal impact entry sub again, like he was back in the day, then Envoy looked way better as well as the route man. Like, it just stemmed from Kenny just finding his groove. And he even said after the event, he was like, I don't know what came over me this weekend, but somehow it just clicked. And now I'm godlike again on the sub. And maybe it's taken him 2 months. Maybe this is why he hasn't tried it before, because every time he's tried to switch to it, he's given it 2 weeks in scrims. It hasn't worked. And they said, look, guys, we're going to stick with this and we're going to make it work because we still believe that Kenny has this in him somewhere. And he seemed to unlock it again this weekend. And like, if he can, it all relies on him, I think. Like, him turning up was the difference maker. And And I think that they do have a reasonable chance of going back to back. It's only 2 weeks out. The coaching staff deserves some credit for sticking with it, and Shane as well, after joining them, seems to have especially helped turn around their search, because their search was a big benefit for them this weekend. But also just their control was big. Their control probably won this tournament. And the way they beat you guys in control was unreal. Like, I've never seen a team dispatch FaZe like that in a long time. So I don't think they're going to be as dominant at champs, but I think they've got a great chance of getting like another grand finals here.
Yeah, I think it was a complete team performance. Like, all 4 players played terrific. I think Envoy was their best player going into Sunday. He had a 1.57 overall KD versus Toronto. He had like a 1.39, I want to say. Yeah, 1.39 in hardpoint versus us on Thursday. But then come Sunday, you have Draza, Kenny, Octane just all putting up really crazy numbers and doing like terrific just across the board. Again, like, this team has, even though they've been struggling, they've always had the fundamentals. It was just like their individual performances weren't there like always consistently. But like, fundamentally, they were always doing the right things. So I knew eventually it was going to click as long as they kept up with that. And they kept up with that. They got good at control and hardpoint, but also their S&D clicked. And when you're able to always have that game 3 in your pocket, and then like their map pool, what they're good at too is they're good at Berlin and they're good at Kavutu and hardpoint. And that's what most of the good teams don't want to play right now. So it's like they have a great map pool compared to the other good teams. They have they're really good at control, and they found their S&D this weekend. So it's just something like everything added up together, and it was just it was a total team win from head to toe from this team. It was really great. So shout out all of them, including Cap and Shane and all 4 of those players. So they had a really terrific tournament.
Yep. And you guys know I love stats, so listen to these ones. No one went negative in any mode, in like anything. No one went negative in first bloods at all. Their hill time, no one went below like 48 seconds, so everyone's jumping in the hill at some point. Their control, they had a 1.13 KD and went 5-1 at the major, which is ridiculous. And Kenny had a 1.45 in search and destroy with 1 kill per round. It's just like ridiculous seeing them play at this level, especially Kenny, because earlier in the year we were kind of bagging on him to be the one to be dropped. Like, he had a 0.8 with the SMG for like the first, I guess, like up until this major almost. Like, he wasn't really that guy, and now he's suddenly World War II Kenny again, right when it matters, which is very ominous for the champs. And it's just amazing to see. Like, people say stats don't really matter, but then when you look at them in context and like see exactly how good they've been playing and then winning this event as well, I think the last time I remember seeing every single player positive in every mode was like FaZe Clan in 2015, like UMG Dallas or something ridiculous. Like, this doesn't happen. Like, this was a dominant victory. And the only time they lost was to New York, and they still avenged that loss anyway by just dominating one of the best respawn teams in respawn. So,
do you really read out their hardpoint stats actually this event? Because if I remember correctly, each player had incredibly consistent hardpoint numbers.
Yeah,
just
so
KD.
Kenny had a 1.09, Draza a 1.06, Octane a 1.07, and Envoy a 1.06, and they were all like very close in kills per 10 minutes. So it's not like anyone was like an outlier and outslaying which won them series. It was just like they were all consistently playing at a level at the same pace, playing, as a unit. It's amazing.
And it was the same thing actually in control.
Yeah, it was. Except in control, everyone has like a 1.1, 1.2.
Yeah. In control, it's Draza with a 1.12, Envoy with a 1.08, Kenny with a 1.19, and Octane with a 1.13. So they're all like right next to each other in both respawn modes.
Yeah, it's mad. And then in search, there's just Draza's got a 1.2, Octane a 1.2, Kenny a 1.45, and then Envoy a 1. Like, literally, like, that doesn't happen. It's insane. So
yeah,
they're looking like they could be favorites for champs. If they're playing at this level, they continue it. What a turnaround.
I mean, you imagine, like, you think there's got to be one kind of exception to the rule, right? That the winner falls off. And I feel like this honestly could be it. I know that everyone's going to say, the winners always fall off. And in fairness, it's not going to be easy for them because teams are going to obviously look very heavily at what Thieves are doing. They're going to look at their map pool. They're going to look at the fact that they play a lot of Berlin controls and say, let's not play that against them in the series. So I think it's going to be harder for Thieves. They're not going to have it all their own way at all. But yeah, I think that the previous times in previous seasons we've seen Kenny hit a form like this, he's never... he hasn't dropped off that form quickly. Like, World War II Kenny was dominant pretty much the whole year. And that TK team won stage 2, right? And then they were in the grand finals at Champs that season, pretty much back to back. Kenny was still playing at that very high level. Then in Black Ops 4, it was 100 Thieves winning London, then Anaheim. And then 100 Thieves didn't have the greatest run at Miami, but they still came back and made the grand finals at Champs. Kenny at that point was on the Maddox, but I don't expect him having found that kind of groove and the team having clicked in that way, that to not be the case in 2 weeks' time, especially given that they're going to put more time in now than any other team will have done. And, there are no breaks, right? So it's not like things are going to reset. So I think it's going to be harder for them, but I still feel like they are, out of all the teams that have won events so far this season, this is the most confident that a team will at least keep up that level. Whether they win, that's another question. I think it's going to be tough.
Well, that's why I hated when people were calling for JCap's head, because this team has always fundamentally played correct. It was just about getting your individuals to get those numbers up, and that's what happened this weekend. They've caught momentum, they caught fire, they played really well. And I don't see really many people apologizing for calling for Cap's head for so long, but I do believe him and Shane obviously have had a good system in place. Obviously I put Cap has been around and they're playing the same style of Call of Duty. They literally played since stage 1. It hasn't changed. They're continuing to play the same style. They just had the individual momentum and fire catch on all at once this weekend. So yeah, I mean this team always had a lot of talent. They always had a lot of fundamentally played correct. It was just about getting your S&E good, and then the map pool. I can't say enough. Their map pool just fit against what every other good team was playing, and it gave them that advantage. And then when you play fundamentally correct, you have the veto advantage. You have your individuals are catching fire. They were bound to have a good result this weekend. And honestly, they went from 8th to top 6 to top 4 to now winning. And they've only gone up. And even at the Pro-Am, they finished 2nd. So throughout this entire season, they've been placing better and better and better and better. So, yeah, it's just something you have to tip their coaches for having that, and then their players for persevering after a tough start to the year.
Yeah, they finally reached the level that we expected from them during the off-season. And they took the route that they didn't take last year by getting antsy and making changes whenever something wasn't working. So I think this year they chose the correct method to finding success rather than picking up random players, slotting them in, hoping for the best, and then not having that cohesion that they expected. So it's nice to see that they're actually in that spot now.
I mean, they still kind of got it wrong in a way. They had Kenny on the flex, Draz on the sub. They had to really work things out. And I don't even know if how confident they were that initially after making that SMG Kenny change, given the fact it didn't work out in the first few weeks, I imagine they were concerned. But yeah, you've got to give them some credit for what they ended up achieving. But it took them some time. But SMG Kenny for the remainder of his career, hopefully, because he's no player is more fun to watch. Very few players are more fun to watch when they're on point than Kenny. Let's do power rankings, baby, because this, I guess, is going to kind of be a champs predictions type thing, Omar. I don't exactly know what you're going to bring up on the screen here to do this, but we're going to do a quick power rankings rundown here ahead of champs. I guess we're not going to include teams that, well, I guess we can include teams that are, okay, we scroll in and Paris are already in D. I mean, what do we want to do for the teams that didn't make it? Gorillas, Florida, Minnesota. Do we just chuck them in the C tier or something altogether?
Just don't even put them in. There's no point. I mean, their season's done. There's no power.
Yeah, it's fair. Yeah, there is no power. The power is off.
Yeah.
The Paris, they never turned the power on. They spawned into Kino, the Total or whatever, and they couldn't find the power. So that was unfortunate. So they all go down there. Paris, the best of the bunch. Okay, we've got to rank 8 teams in terms of where they're currently sitting. I think the top 4, maybe even top 4 is suspect. I think the top 3 are clear.
I think we should honestly do 2, 2, 2, and 2, right? Because there's 8. So just rank them by that.
I'm down for that.
Okay.
You start at the bottom?
Yeah.
Whoever our top 8 placing teams at champs, I'm going to take... Let me look at the bracket here. even though I guess it's power rankings, so maybe it's not so relevant, but we want our power rankings to reflect champs placings, so you got to think about it. I'm going to take probably London and Breach.
I agree with London, but honestly, I think Toronto. Because I actually do I do think Boston is good, but the way I look at it is because I think LA Thieves has the edge versus Boston, but I think they would play the loser of London and Seattle, and I think Boston would have the edge over London. So I would do London, and then I think Toronto would face the loser of Atlanta and New York, and I would like both of my team or New York over Toronto. So that's why I got to say Boston or London and Toronto.
And C.
In whatever the worst one is, in C,
Yeah, C.
Which is interesting for sure.
You wouldn't put Seattle in there right now?
Well, I think Seattle are going to beat London.
Yeah, who do you guys have over Seattle over London? Because that's obviously the matchup there. It's really tough.
Sounds weird. I feel like it could go either way, like entirely. It just really depends on which Seattle shows up. If it's stage 3 Seattle, I mean, they're easily going to win. If it's stage 4 Seattle, they're going to find a way to choke a game 5. So, I don't know. Let's go London then, but they're the higher seed, so it's like...
Yeah.
I mean, I think London are in the C tier, but I don't know if I would want to necessarily put Toronto in C tier because I can see them beating OpTic in that series. So I don't know if we put anyone else down there for now because I know what you're saying, that like Breach could well drop down to losers and beat London, but like, and okay, they placed top 6, but does that really mean they're not a C tier team?
Well, like honestly, if I had to do this, I would think I would put Boston and Seattle in B. Like I don't think they're much better. I think it's very, very close between the C and B.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, maybe all those 4 teams are in B.
Okay, I don't hate it.
In some weird order, you know what I mean? Because I kind of agree that Ultra, Seattle, Boston, and London. Like I would say London are the worst of the 4. Okay, let's do this, Omar. If chat says we're faded, but at least we have a nice gap between B and D. So I think that these are all going in B. So London are going in B, Seattle's going in B, Ultra's going in B, and what order do we put these in? Because I think London are 8th, personally.
Yeah, so London at the bottom.
And then
Boston at the front. Maybe
Boston
Ultra
front,
and then Seattle. Yeah, so I think it goes Boston, Ultra,
Boston's
Seattle.
The 5th best team in the game right now?
I mean, I think out of those 4, they're the team that's looking the most consistent.
I mean, Boston just beat Seattle.
They did beat Seattle, yeah. I will give it that.
And honestly, it would be if Boston and Toronto played like right now. They didn't play at the major, right? I'm not faded.
No, I didn't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. But if Boston and Toronto played right now, I would probably pick Boston because Boston lost to Texas and somehow they lost to Florida. I really don't know how that happened, but to be fair, I would still take. I think I don't want to be harsh because I think Toronto's still a really good team, and they'll always have S&D just because of how good I think Blands, Kleenex, Insight, they all love S&D. So, I mean, I don't hate it like this. You could switch it with Toronto being above them, and I wouldn't disagree either. Those 2 teams are just so close to each other, honestly, in my opinion.
Okay,
right, I mean, we can switch it around after. I think that's fine for now.
No, I think that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I'm getting overruled, but I honestly don't hate this because I still see some potential in these teams. But I think that's the correct 4 in least in B tier. OpTic are definitely not in the S tier, so we can comfortably put them in the A tier. And I think they're probably the 4th best right now. I honestly think that the rest of it is relatively clear cut. It's OpTic, and then it's New York, and then it's FaZe, and then it's Thieves in some order. OpTic are definitely not above any of the other teams. Like, I would not say that OpTic... I would say OpTic are like the 4th favorites for this tournament. Because if they fix that, if they bring a couple of those extra things into the toolkit, as we mentioned, they can do it. But they're definitely not S tier worthy. The question is, who's the 3rd best team? Is it
New York?
New York, or is it FaZe? I would probably say New York because I still feel like in that series against FaZe, New York are the underdogs there. I've still not quite seen enough from New York in Search and Destroy to make me think that they can clutch up a game 5 against FaZe. I think they can, but I would still say FaZe are like 55-60% favorites in that series. So
Yeah.
I think this is the correct A tier. Are FaZe S tier? It's another question. Or even Thieves S tier. It's Vanguard, baby.
I mean,
Just for
if
the-
Thieves play the way they were playing, they're S tier. Like,
That's
if they
true,
play at
that
that
is
same
true.
level, that's definitely S tier. But what do you reckon? I reckon they're probably the number one team right now. I mean, you'd have to say that.
I think Thieves are number one. I'm actually that's my take this time.
Yeah.
It's Vanguard. The most recent winner is number one. That's the rules.
Yeah.
But they
I-
actually
I
were
don't
playing
hate
the
it.
number one team.
I don't
It
hate it
could
just
even
because they.
be... Sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say I don't hate it just because they did beat us twice this past weekend, and I really do feel like they played a very clean like game of Call of Duty this whole entire weekend. So I do think like both our teams are very close. I think if we had after 2 weeks of practice, I think there's and like obviously we have 2 weeks after this. I think there's very clear things that we can do to counter Thieves. But for now, I definitely think they're like I would put them at one, like trying to be non-biased as possible.
Thieves are
Yeah.
one for sure. But then FaZe, where do they go here? Do they go behind Thieves, or do they go above New York? Oh my! But Thieves are the S tier. Thieves are playing S tier right now. They deserve S tier.
My only counter argument, I guess,
Maybe not.
for like us being an S is that we still have looked consistently well. It's just our S&D took a little dip this past weekend, and we did beat Texas pretty handily 3-1. We haven't played New York actually in a minute.
True.
But the last times we did play New York, we did beat them both. Like I believe, let me make sure because I'm pretty sure we beat them both times 3-1. But I would say like right now we like us and Thieves would be the best control teams. I think that's the most important part of your map pool as long as you're good at either hardpoint or S&D. And right now we're pretty good at hardpoint. We're not unbeatable by any means, but I would think we're pretty good at hardpoint. And then we have control in our bag. And yeah, so we against New York, we won 3-1, 3-0.
I think I've been
3-1.
convinced FaZe should be S. Because I think I'm just going into this tournament thinking like, who is actually the two most likely teams to win? And FaZe have to be one of the two most likely teams to win. It's just how it is. Like,
well, quite honestly, whoever
think
wins
so.
that first matchup is in a terrific position to win the tournament. That first matchup's going to mean everything between us and New York, because then you play either London and Seattle, and then you play
That's
obviously in
top
the winners
three.
bracket. So like I do think we're the top three there have a terrific chance. Even Texas has the top four there has a terrific chance to make it to a deep run at champs right off the rip, just by having a good start.
I feel like it's kind of weird that New York and OpTic are on the same level. Like,
But
do you
should be
feel
worse?
like we could see New York also in S? So Atlanta, LA, and then Atlanta, then New York in S, and then OpTic
Damn.
A alone, and then B just
That's
as it is.
interesting, actually.
Because that's how it feels. Like
I would
don't
say
feel like
good.
OpTic.
No. I would say
Huh?
no, just because New York beat Minnesota, who we all can agree is not the best team. They beat Florida, and then they beat LA Thieves once and then lost to them. So that was their run this weekend. So I wouldn't say that's like I wouldn't say that's crazy, but they did have a really good qualifier. So
They beat OpTic online.
I guess it's like how we should do a chat vote for like for this one.
So
yeah,
put
that's a
Atlanta
good
in
point.
S.
Can we? Yes. The question that we now have is whether New York are S or A. I would say I'm not going to say what I would say. I want the chat to be unbiased.
Yeah, so
If we
LA,
could
sorry,
do a
Atlanta,
poll over,
LA,
that's
Atlanta
possible.
in S, and then we'll vote on New York to be an S or A.
I guess
Maybe
what we should
can't
do
do poll
too.
on mobile.
Do we think that
Poll
4 and
might be
B
choked.
still 4 and B, like or not move down London and Seattle to C, or keep it 4B? That would be the only other thing.
I honestly think all the placements of those teams are so interchangeable.
Okay.
Yeah,
Like,
I think Toronto probably
honest.
should be top of B though. In
I
hindsight.
agree. I want to put Ultra
Okay.
top of B. I don't want to have Boston top of B. It feels wrong.
Okay, I'm fine. Yeah, fine with that.
I think we should do that. If we can't do the poll, it's all good because I think that New York and S is a bit much. I think that maybe you could argue it, but I don't think they've quite hit that level. I think they've really turned up this stage when they needed to, but I don't know if they've shown me quite enough yet. They're going to need to hit another form. And I think that's a form that we've really only seen Thieves and FaZe hit in recent times. And even FaZe haven't hit it that much, and their run wasn't even that impressive. But So yeah, I think if you can't do it, Omar, all good. Just chalk it off. Chalk it off. We'll commit to it, and we'll go Thieves 1, FaZe 2 in S tier, New York OpTic in A, and then Ultra Breach Seattle Ravens in B.
Actually, hold on. I think I can do it on Twitch. Ready?
Oh, you can do a poll. I don't know how to do the poll.
There we
Maybe
go. Ready?
I could go to Titan.
I'll do it for 2 minutes. So we're gonna put it in.
Oh, wow, he's done it. He's done it.
There
wow,
we
that's
go.
impressive.
So there's
Okay,
50...
I'm not voting
Yeah, I'm not voting
yet. Okay, the chat's already decided.
Yeah. See, I think they are very, very capable. See, like, I don't think the gap between any of these teams is huge. I just want to put that out there right now. Like, I don't think S is like this unbeatable, like S tier craziness. I think S and A, it's pretty much A plus and A. Like, I don't, or like even A. I think it's A and A minus. Like, I really don't think it's anything that crazy. I think New York could very easily play us or LA and beat us. Same thing with OpTic. The map pool disparity. I think like right now the LA has the best map pool, just because their map pool counters. I think ours, New York and Texas, is very, very well, and I think that's why LA has a big advantage right now. But I definitely think like the gap is very not big at all, very minuscule between all four of the teams.
Agreed.
Yeah.
So there we go. Perfect.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen.
LA the favorites.
YouTube poll says New York A, which I think is right. So yeah, we've got LA Thieves marginal favorites for champs, and then it's FaZe, then it's New York, and then I think OpTic are, to me, they are like, that honestly might be the little gap to me between those top three and OpTic being like the fourth favorite, because I mean, then again, New York and FaZe play each other round one, so like the bracket is messed up, but
yeah,
OpTic need to improve quite a bit to be a contender. LA Thieves, FaZe don't need to improve that much. New York need to do a bit more. OpTic need to do a significant bit more, and then the other teams I think have a lot of work to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll put it this way too. Like if this tournament was tomorrow, LA would probably have a small advantage just due to their map pool. So it's going to take a lot of work from literally all 7 teams, and even LA is probably going to want to work on their map pool in S&D. But like all 7 of these teams are going to have to work at least 1 or 2 maps outside of their core map pool right now, and it's going to be crucial, like absolutely crucial, how the next week and a half of practice goes. All 7 teams below LA right now.
There we have it, ladies and gentlemen. Well, there you go. So, what a major, baby. Next week, we shall be doing our full bracket predictions. Hopefully, Crone is alive and well, and we can actually break down what we think is going to happen in each of the matches, and potentially any rostermania stuff, because I think over the next week, there might well be a little bit of juice happening on potential teams and players, and free agents are probably already talking around, as is Call of Duty. But I mean, yeah, there we go. Lion, final thoughts before we close out? Great weekend, man. I feel like to a certain degree, this kind of revived. It made me like really like COD again. I don't know what you mean. Like I obviously love COD and still have enjoyed it, but this weekend was like, damn, majors and the COD community is actually where it's at, you know?
Yeah, the majors always seem to like revitalize my love of COD. And that's why I say we don't have many a year, because it kind of proves exactly like the worth of COD as well. And so, yeah, I'm kind of just getting sick of the online qualifiers. I think that's all that proved.
Thanks.
You know, maybe a LAN league again is probably the best way to go forward, with COVID being kind of less, well, not less of an issue, but less of a problem. And so we'll see. I think, yeah, it was a great weekend of COD. Can't wait for champs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're just gonna have to find ways, because I understand why they do the online like qualifier league matches, because you need, you know, streaming hours. You need to be able to do that for advertisements, for sponsorships, which is how the league makes money, which is how the players and teams make money. So they just have to find a way to make that, still have that, but not make it as like boring or like meaningless, but not also have it be weigh so much on the overall like CDL points, which is extremely hard to do. Like saying that is very easy, but the less CDL points you make online COD worth, the less people are going to want to view it, right? And then that makes it make the viewers go down. So they're just going to have to find a way to balance that, and then or find ways to make it more exciting, whether it's just online mini tournaments that are online, and then have like the pool play and everything
on LAN for just separate tournaments, kind of like how Halo does, or they're gonna have to find a way to play around with it. But it was a very, very like awesome weekend, honestly.
That's going to do it for today. Thanks all for joining us, enjoying our company this evening on the YouTube stream, Twitch stream, after the fact, all the podcast platforms. Thanks so much sorting it out. Take care of yourselves. We'll be back next week, same time with any luck. Actually on the Tuesday, hopefully, before the World Championship kicks off in not that far from today. So crazy scenes. But yeah, a couple of weeks away, baby. And it's all over, surprisingly early. Thanks for watching as always. Take care of yourselves. And we'll see you next time.